Tutankhamun's mask is an icon. And I think part of it is because it is made of solid gold, and a lot of people get wowed by that.
The most famous face on Earth isn't a movie star or a world leader. It's a golden mask that's been staring back at us for over a century. Millions have seen it in museums. Billions recognize it instantly. And for decades, we were told the story was simple. This was the face of a boy king, buried with perfection, sealed in time forever. But that story is starting to fall apart because hidden beneath the gold, beneath the polished surface everyone admires, scientists have found signs that something doesn't add up. Tiny details, alterations so precise they went unnoticed for 3,000 years. Marks that suggest this mask lived another life before it ever touched King Tut. And now, using technology that can read the history of metal at an atomic level, researchers believe they've uncovered evidence of a massive ancient cover-up, one that rewrites who this mask was really made for and exposes a secret powerful enough to change everything we thought we knew about Egypt's golden age. King Tut's death wasn't just tragic, it was a logistical nightmare. He died suddenly at just 19, and in ancient Egypt, that triggered an unbreakable rule. A pharaoh had exactly 70 days to be mummified, buried, and sent into the afterlife properly. No extensions, no exceptions. Miss that window, and the king's soul could be lost forever. Now think about what that actually meant. In just over 2 months, workers would have had to prepare a royal tomb, construct multiple coffins, gather thousands of burial objects, and somehow create a flawless death mask made of solid gold. Not plated, not symbolic. Over 20 pounds of carefully shaped and laid gold. Even by ancient standards, it was an impossible deadline. The tomb itself tells the story of that rush. It was shockingly small for a pharaoh, tucked away like it was never meant for him. The wall paintings look unfinished, as if the artist ran out of time and simply stopped. Even the massive stone sarcophagus shows chipped corners, suggesting workers had to force it into a space that wasn't designed to hold it. From the very beginning, King Tut's burial looked less like a carefully planned royal farewell and more like a desperate scramble against the clock. And once experts started noticing that, they began asking a far more dangerous question. If everything was rushed, what else might not have been made for him? As researchers looked closer, the inconsistencies didn't stop at the tomb. They spread to the treasures inside it. At first glance, the burial goods looked overwhelming. Golden chariots, weapons, jewelry, statues, all packed tightly into the cramped chambers. It felt like proof that no expense had been spared. But when experts began studying individual pieces, a pattern started to emerge. Some statues didn't quite resemble King Tut at all. The facial features were sharper, older, and in some cases noticeably different from what we know of the young pharaoh. Certain inscriptions appeared awkwardly altered, as if names had been changed in a hurry. Even more unsettling, several pieces of jewelry seemed designed for a different body shape entirely, slimmer and more delicate than Tut's. Then there were the coffins themselves. The innermost coffin fit his body perfectly, but the outer ones showed signs of reuse, adjustments, modifications, and stylistic elements that didn't match Tut's short reign. It was as if parts of the burial had been assembled from whatever was available, rather than crafted specifically for him. That realization changed how scholars looked at the most important object of all. If statues, jewelry, and even coffins had been repurposed, then the golden mask, the one thing everyone believed was flawless, suddenly didn't feel untouchable anymore. And when experts shifted their attention back to the mask, one tiny detail immediately set off alarm. It wasn't a crack or a missing piece that raised the first red flag. It was something far subtler: the ears. When experts really studied the golden mask, they noticed both ears were pierced. That might sound harmless, but in ancient Egypt, it was anything but. Pierced ears were typically reserved for children and women. An adult male pharaoh, especially on a sacred burial mask meant to guide him into the afterlife, would almost never be shown that way. That detail alone was unsettling, but it wasn't the only one. The face itself seemed different from what scholars expected. The features were softer, the jaw was less pronounced. The overall expression felt almost delicate, especially when compared to statues and reliefs of other male rulers from the same period. Some researchers even pointed out that the gold on the face appeared slightly redder than the gold on the headdress, suggesting it may have come from from a different source. Individually, these details could be explained away. Artistic style, personal preference, a youthful king frozen in gold. But together, they painted a much stranger picture. If the mask followed traditions meant for women or children, then it raised the question scholars had long avoided asking out loud. What if this mask wasn't made for King Tut at all? And if it wasn't his, then whose face had been staring back at the world for over 100 years? That question led straight to one of the most powerful and mysterious figures in ancient Egypt, Queen Nefertiti. She wasn't just a royal spouse. She ruled alongside her husband as an equal, appeared in art striking enemies, and held a level of authority no queen before her ever had. Then, suddenly, she vanished from the historical record. No clear death, no confirmed tomb, just silence. Some historians believe Nefertiti didn't disappear at all. Instead, they think she became pharaoh herself, ruling under a new royal name after her husband's death. If that were true, she would have had her own burial equipment prepared in advance, including a royal death mask. And if King Tut died unexpectedly, that equipment would have been the closest thing available to meet the strict 70-day deadline. That theory explained everything that didn't fit: the pierced ears, the softer facial features, even the rushed alterations seen on other burial objects. It suggested a scenario where priests, under immense pressure, took what already existed and modified it just enough to pass as the boy king's own. For decades, this idea divided Egyptologists. Some called it reckless speculation, others believed it was the only explanation that made sense. But there was a problem. Proving it would require examining the mask beneath its surface, and no one was willing to risk damaging the most famous artifact in the world. So the debate remained frozen in time, until an unexpected disaster finally forced the mask to give up its secrets. That moment came in 2014, and it started with a mistake no one thought was possible. During a routine cleaning at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, the mask's long braided beard suddenly snapped off. This wasn't just decoration. The beard symbolized divine power, linking the pharaoh to the gods themselves, and now it was lying in pieces. Museum staff panicked. Instead of calling in conservation experts, they tried to fix the problem quietly, and that decision only made things worse. They used epoxy, an industrial-strength adhesive meant for construction and plumbing, not priceless ancient gold. The glue hardened almost instantly, leaving visible residue on the chin of Egypt's greatest treasure. When the damage became public, the backlash was immediate and brutal. The story spread worldwide, and outrage poured in from historians, scientists, and the public alike. A mask that had survived more than 3,000 years had been scarred by a rushed repair job. The Egyptian government had no choice but to intervene. An international team of top conservators was assembled, led by a German specialist brought in to undo the damage properly. But as they prepared to remove the epoxy and restore the beard, they realized something unexpected. This disaster had created a rare opportunity. For the first time, the mask could be studied up close using modern scientific tools, and those scans were about to deliver an answer that many believed would finally put the Nefertiti theory to rest. The conservation team didn't rely on guesswork. Before reattaching the beard, they subjected the mask to a series of high-tech scans designed to see beneath the surface without causing damage. The most important tool was something called X-ray fluorescence, or XRF. In simple terms, it allowed scientists to read the chemical fingerprint of the gold itself. The logic was straightforward. If the mask had originally belonged to someone else, there would be signs: different gold alloys, tiny seams where parts had been cut and replaced, traces of solder, even microscopic alterations would show up under this kind of analysis. If Nefertiti's face had been removed and King Tut's added later, the gold would tell on itself. After months of scanning, the results came back, and they seemed definitive. The gold in the face matched the gold in the headdress perfectly. There were no visible seams, no solder lines, no chemical differences suggesting separate pieces. Even the hieroglyphs spelling King Tut's name appeared untouched, with no signs of an earlier inscription underneath. One detail sealed the case. The delicate blue glass inlays around the eyes and across the headdress were completely intact. Any intense heat used to attach a new face would have cracked or melted that glass instantly. It hadn't. The conclusion was clear. The mask had been made as a single piece, specifically for King Tut. With that, most experts declared the mystery solved. The beard was reattached using beeswax, the same material the ancient Egyptians once used. The mask was whole again. The Nefertiti theory was officially dismissed, and for a while, everyone accepted that the story had finally reached its end. But not everyone was convinced. A small group of researchers couldn't shake the feeling that something still didn't add up. The rushed burial, metal, the reused coffins, the pierced ears. Together, they formed a pattern that felt too deliberate to ignore. To them, the problem wasn't the conclusions drawn from the scans, it was the limits of the technology used to reach them. X-rays and XRF are powerful, but they have blind spots. They can show density and composition, but they can't tell the story of what metal has been through. They can't reveal whether gold was poured once and left untouched, or reheated, hammered, reshaped, and cooled again. If ancient artisans used the exact same gold alloy to make their alterations, those scans would see everything as one perfect, uniform object. And what if the changes were done with unimaginable precision? What if pierced ear holes were filled using gold from the same batch, then polished until the seams vanished? What if an original royal name was hammered flat and recarved without adding any new metal? To an X-ray, all of that would look completely clean. To find proof of that kind of craftsmanship, scientists would need more than a picture of the mask. They'd need a way to read the metal's memory itself. And just as this debate was fading into history, a new technology emerged that promised to do exactly that. The new technology was called quantum resonance imaging, or QRI. Unlike traditional X-rays, it didn't just look at density or composition, it scanned the metal at an atomic level, mapping its entire molecular structure and thermal history. Every hammer strike, every reheating, every alteration left a faint signature, a fingerprint that had been invisible to science until now. In late 2024, under the cover of night at the Grand Egyptian Museum, a small, secretive team known only as Project Osiris wheeled in the massive QRI scanner. The mask, silent and golden, sat under the machine's beam while hours of scanning began. Quantum particles pinged each atom, producing echoes that allowed the team to reconstruct the hidden history of the mask, layer by layer. At first, the scans confirmed what everyone thought. The mask appeared intact, flawless, and made for Tut. Then the scanner focused on the edges of the face. What they saw made the team's jaws drop. Subtle variations in thermal patterns revealed that the gold in the face had been superheated differently from the surrounding headdress. The front remained flawless, but the atomic traces told a story of precision craftsmanship. Someone had cut, removed, and replaced the face from behind, leaving no visible cracks or damage to the front. Next, the ears. X-rays had shown solid gold, but the quantum scan revealed tiny cylindrical plugs inside the earlobes. The original holes had been filled with gold from the same alloy and meticulously hammered to blend perfectly. And finally, the name. Beneath Tut's hieroglyphs, the scanner detected flattened, beaten metal, evidence that a previous inscription had been erased. Using digital reconstruction, the team revealed the original name, Nefer, Queen Nefertiti's throne name. For the first time in over 3,000 years, the mask had told its true story. King Tut's famous golden face had once belonged to someone else entirely. The truth finally revealed was as dramatic as it was meticulous. When King Tut died suddenly, there was no mask ready for him. The priests, desperate to meet the unbreakable 70-day burial deadline, had taken Nefertiti's royal mask, already a masterpiece, and adapted it for the boy king. Every alteration was performed with astonishing skill. The pierced ears were carefully filled with gold plugs, polished until the seams were invisible. A new face, modeled after Tut, was crafted and attached from behind, leaving the front flawless. The original hieroglyphs bearing Nefertiti's name were hammered flat, erased from history, and replaced with Tut's own. Every modification was invisible to the naked eye, and even advanced X-rays had failed to detect them. What this means is staggering. The mask that the world has admired for over a century wasn't created solely for Tut. It was a recycled masterpiece, transformed in secret to honor a king who died too young. Yet, despite the urgency, the craftsmanship was so perfect that no flaw was visible. It was a flawless emergency, a work of genius born from panic, politics, and reverence. The golden mask now sits in the Grand Egyptian Museum, seen by millions. To the casual observer, it remains Tutankhamun's face, but the quantum scans tell a different story, one of Nefertiti, erased from history and yet immortalized in gold. Every detail, every shadow, every shimmer of the metal carries secrets that only modern science could uncover. And it makes you wonder, if the most famous artifact in the world still has hidden truths, what other mysteries are waiting quietly beneath the surface, waiting for the right technology to reveal them? The golden mask of King Tut has long been hailed as a perfect symbol of ancient Egypt's power and artistry, but now we know it's more than that. It's a story of urgency, political maneuvering, and unmatched craftsmanship. Beneath its flawless surface lies the history of a queen who vanished from records yet left her mark in ways no one could have imagined. Science has transformed how we see the past. What once seemed settled world. The mask made solely for Tut has now been rewritten at the atomic level. The Nefertiti theory isn't speculation anymore. It's proven, hidden in plain sight for over 3,000 years. And it raises a larger question. How many other solved mysteries are only waiting for the right eyes, the right technology to tell the real story? Every museum visitor who gazes at Tut's mask now sees only the gold and jewels, but the mask itself holds a secret life, a tale of adaptation and survival, of history quietly edited by the hands of the past. And perhaps somewhere beneath the surface of other treasures, more hidden truths are waiting, ready to challenge everything we think we know about history. History is never finished. It's only waiting for the next discovery.